Shalom guys, welcome back to another episode of YHWH Ministry with Casa Israel Yarad. Thank you for being there. We're going to continue with the weekly Torah portions. We are in the book of Devarim, Torah portion Eikev, right? And it's a very important portion as we continue through this a very important book of Deuteronomy or Devarim, these words, in which Moses is reminding the people, especially this younger generation, of the journey they are about to embark, being led by Joshua, because he will not be able to enter the land, right? He will not be able to enter the land because in his service, through all his trials and throughout the journey, there was a moment in which Moses did not honor God's holiness. Hence, Adonai says, "You will not go into the land, but you will prepare Joshua, and he will bring them into the land that I promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." And so, it's a very important transition that is occurring now, and we're going to review a little bit of it, and then I'll let you guys be. So, let's go into Torah portion Eikev. Eikev is in Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 12 to Deuteronomy 11, verse 25. The Haftarah, the prophet's portion, is Isaiah 49, verses 14 to Isaiah 51, verse 3. The Brit Hadashah, or New Testament portion, is Romans 8, verse 31 to Romans 39. Okay? Now, Eikev, often translated into because, or as because, literally means heel, which recalls Jacob, or Yaakov, the heel holder, who wrestled with the pain of his past to learn to bear the name Israel, the one who persevere with God. Right? And we find that in Genesis 32, verse 28. In our Torah portion reading for this week, Eikev, Moses continues his farewell address to Israel by saying, "And because, Eikev, you listen to these rules and keep and do them, the Lord your God will keep with you the covenant and the love that he has swore to your forefathers." Now, Eikev in this context has to do with proactive or an action of being diligent to uphold the covenant or maintain and preserve the relationship you have with God, not only in a spiritual aspect. And when I say spiritual, many people say with prayer or with study, but with actively, consciously, self-aware of what God has commanded and your role and your responsibility in fulfilling that covenant or that relationship. Okay, so just continue. The portion begins, "And it shall come to pass," right? Because Eikev, because you listen to these judgments. The emphasis is not on earning God's favor through works, but on the covenant principle. Obedience is the response of a people who have already been loved, redeemed, and chosen by God. It is important because it is essential to also the New Testament message, meaning that before God gave the Torah or the covenant to Israel, they were redeemed because of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? And Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are the representatives of the faith, meaning that Abraham had faith, and it was counted to them as righteousness. That's why there is a constant reference to what comes first, faith or the commandments, right? And in this case, God is saying, hey, you guys are saved today, not because you were perfect, obedient children, is because I have confessed and I have tied myself to the promises I've given to your fathers. Hence, today you guys are entering this land, not because you're perfect, not because you're perfectly obedient, is because I have true faithfulness to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Hence, when you go into this land, be faithful to me as I've been faithful to your fathers, because I'll be faithful to you. hence obey me. Okay, so that is the principle that's being introduced here. Now, one of the most important messages of this portion is where we're going to, maintain ourselves in, is this: the danger of success. After 40 years in the wilderness, Israel is about to enter the land flowing with abundance. Yet Moses' first warning is not about the nations around them, it's about something even more dangerous: success without remembrance. God will give them houses they did not build, just something that we read, vineyards they did not plant, wells they did not dig, cities they did not establish. Okay? So, now, he says in Deuteronomy 8, verse 11, be careful that you do not forget the Lord your God, falling to observe his commands, his laws, and his decrees that I am giving you this day. Otherwise, when you eat and are satisfied, when you build fine houses and settle down, and when your herds and flock grow large, and your silver and gold increase, and all you have is multiplied, then your heart will become proud, and you will forget the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. He led you through the vast and dreadful wilderness, that thirsty and waterless land. With his venomous snakes and scorpions, he brought you water out of hard rock. He gave you manna to eat in the wilderness, something your ancestors had never known, to humble and test you, so that in the end it might go well with you. You may say to yourself in that moment, my power and the strength of my hands have produced this wealth for me. But remember that the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you the ability to produce wealth, and so confirms his covenant, which he swore to your ancestors, as it is today. So this is important because it is highlighting and stamping faith first, works follow through. So faith first, works follow through. Right? These people had to work the land, had to produce, but at the end of the day, they had to understand that before they ever enter that land, they had to remember the conversation, the reiteration that they are having right now, which is, hey, you're not entering this land because you're great and because you earned it perfectly. You have entered this land in the manner that you have entered this land because your forefathers rejected this land. Hence, do not reject the land and do not reject the one who has given you this land. So when you work it, enjoy it, but don't forget the provider. Okay? So, let's continue. Now, this is how he tells you to be conscious and take care of it. Be careful to follow every command I'm giving you today, so that you may live and increase and may enter and possess the land the Lord promised on oath to your ancestors. Remember how the Lord your God led you all the way in the wilderness these 40 years to humble and test you in order to know what was in your heart, whether or not you would keep his commands. He humbled you, causing you to hunger, and then feeding you with manna, which neither you nor your ancestors had known, to teach you, that man does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord. Your clothes did not wear out, or on your feet did not swell during these 40 years. Know then in your heart that as a man disciplines his son, so the Lord your God disciplines you. Observe the commands of the Lord your God. Walk in obedience to him and revere him. For the Lord your God is bringing you into a good land, a land with brooks, streams, and deep springs, gushing out into the valleys and hills, a land with wheat and barley, vines and fig trees, pomegranates, olive oil, and honey, a land where bread will not be scarce, and you will lack nothing. A land where rocks are iron, and you can dig copper out of the hills. Now, this is important because we're in season 2, Isaiah, right? So in this portion, the continuation of remember, stay obedient, stay aware, stay conscious, recognize the provision, recognize the provider, make sure that you diligently obey the commands and the statutes that are given to you, because as you obey diligently, conscious of the provision and the provider, it is going to bring forth the manifestation of true faith in recognition of the one who has provided. Hence, he'll be with you because he's giving you a land that is fruitful and will produce. Okay? So, now, when we transition to Isaiah, the prophet, there is a disconnect with what was said to them and what they enacted, right? And they were scourged. They were kicked out of the land because they went against everything that God just said to them in Deuteronomy. Okay? And so, after they're kicked out, after they're destroyed, Isaiah is telling them the following. Can a mother forget the baby at her breast and have no compassion on the child she has borne? Though she may forget, I will not forget you. See, I have engraved you on the palms of my hands. Your walls are ever before me. So, while Eikev calls Israel not to forget God, Isaiah reminds them that God never forgets his people. The contrast is beautiful because humanity forgets, God remains faithful, right? And that is the message. You make sure that you don't forget because he won't forget. And he won't forget the good and the bad, right? And it is manifested in the prophets, right? God did not forget the bad, hence he cast them out. But he says, I don't forget the good. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, forefathers, those who did justice, those innocent. Because Abraham said, if there was only one, there was only, if there's anyone in the middle of the mist that can be saved, will you save them all? Right? And in this situation, God is saying, hey, even if the mother that bore a child will forget, I won't forget, because I have you in my palms. Engraven in your walls, I am my midst. Okay, so it's very important to understand the message of the journey that we're in. True faith is not measured only by how we trust God when we have nothing, but by how faithful we remember Him when we have everything. It is easy to seek God when the wilderness leaves us with no one else to depend on. The greater test begins when we enter the promised land, when prayers have been answered, when the table is full, when work is flourishing, when life feels secure. That is when Moses asked the question that echoes through Eikev: will we continue to worship the giver, or will we become satisfied with the gifts? The greatest danger was never hunger of the wilderness. It was the abundance that could quietly cause God's people to forget the one who has sustained them every step of the way. True faith does not merely recognize God in times of need. It remembers Him, honors Him, and depends on Him in times of abundance as well. So, what is the message? What's the point? Remember not only the covenant, remember the commandments and the statutes. Apply them diligently because it's going to keep you self-aware and conscious of the giver and provider, and it's going to manifest true faith, which then proceeds with good works. Abraham had faith and it was counted to him as righteousness. Abraham had to follow every instruction God gave him to manifest the faith that was counted to him as righteousness. Yeshua, our Messiah, went into the desert, into the wilderness, and in 40 days and 40 nights he fasted. And when he was confronted, he said, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes out of the mouth of the Lord. So it is a balance between saying you trust God and truly manifesting it, following His commands, His statutes, and instruction. Okay? So, Eikev, you're healed. Make sure that you are proactively and actively manifesting your faith through obedience to God's commandments, statutes, and ordinances. Have a great week. Shavua Tov and Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.